गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गन शॉट। गन शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। प्रणाम, जय हिंद और वणक्कम। आज हम बात करेंगे पीएलए रॉकेट फोर्सेस के बारे में। Let me give you a little background. For a long time, people have been asking me, sir, why don't you do analysis of the rocket force? इसके बारे में बताइए, हमें पता नहीं है। यही सुनने में आ रहा है कि बहुत सारे रॉकेट आ जाएंगे इन इंडिया, यू नो, चाइना fight. I said, okay, let me do it. Went into details, studied the rocket force, and then wrote an article which I posted in our community group. And now I'm presenting this whole story to all of you. Right. At the outset, मैं ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि ये जो PLA रॉकेट फोर्स है, it's a unique force. Unique to the extent no other army has a rocket force of this kind. Right? That's the first thing. Second, it's a mixture of uh, conventional rockets and nuclear weapons. So there's a mixture in this. Okay. That means what? It is at one level tactical, the other level it is strategic in nature. So it's a very powerful system. And by mixing the tactical and the strategic weapon systems, they are conveying a lot of things. You don't know the incoming missile or rocket, whether it has got a nuclear warhead or a conventional warhead. So, question mark. China has a no first use, declaration of nuclear weapons. But with this kind of a thing, you don't know whether he'll use it or not. What is coming, you don't know. So there's a big question mark which comes in when you talk of the PLA rocket force. Okay, the next thing is China places a lot of importance on this rocket force, right? They place a tremendous amount of importance on this rocket force. ये जो rocket force था पहले it used to be called the second artillery, right? And the strategic weapons were separate. उन सबको मिला के इन्होंने एक rocket force खड़ा किया, which is equivalent to Army, Navy, and the Air Force. It's as important for them as others. In fact, they have a fifth arm of the PLA, which is called the Strategic Support Force. ये Strategic Support Force के बारे में basically it deals with network operations and space operations. And इसके बारे में मैंने already एक article लिख दिया है, इसका analysis कर लिया है मैंने, and I've already given it for publishing. जैसे वो publish होता है, I'll get back and we'll analyze it. It's important to understand all these new forces to understand how we will have to fight China, what conditions we'll have to fight China if it comes to a war, and how will this rocket force be utilized, and how many rockets do they have, how many can they use, and for what they will use, and how can we do something against it. That's the crux. If you don't know, well, all the best. हमें पता ही नहीं है तो कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता, बट हमें पता होने की जरूरत है. Okay, we'll first start with the kind of rockets they have. That's a basic. कितने रॉकेट हैं इसके पास, किस तरीके के रॉकेट हैं. ओके, ये है इनके पास जो रॉकेट्स हैं. थोड़ा नजदीक देखेंगे, right? So they have rockets starting with DF-11 down to the last one. So iska, it's been given in terms of, अगर एक टेबल देखेंगे तो सबसे बाएं is the rocket name, then the class, क्या ये SRBM is short range ballistic missile, right? MRBM is medium range ballistic missile. IRBM is intermediate range, uh, right? Ballistic missile. ICBM is intercontinental ballistic missile, cruise missiles, and SLBM is submarine launched ballistic missile. Then the ranges are given. And then what is the status? इसमें मैंने जो दर्शाया है, these are all operational missile systems. अगर आप देखेंगे, I put a box in the center, right, on DF1 and DF26. These two missiles are supposed to be the carrier killers. यानी कि they target the American carriers in South China Sea. And they have a tremendous range of over 2,000 to 4,000 kilometers. Right. If you see DF11, 12, 15, which are up to 600 kilometers, these are all, ये जो मिसाइल्स हैं, ये सब ऑपरेशनल मिसाइल्स हैं जो इनको इट इज यूज फॉर बैटल, कन्वेंशनल. इनके पास इससे भी कम रेंज के रॉकेट्स हैं. जैसे हमारे पास स्मर्च है, उनके पास इसका चाइनीज वर्जन है 8100, which has got a range of about 100 kilometers. एंड उसका एक इम्प्रूव्ड वर्जन है, इसके 300 किलोमीटर तक जाता है. जो मोबाइल है, जो बार बार खबर आता है कि टिबेटन प्लेटो में डिप्लॉय किया है, ये बाद में भी आएगा. सो दीज आर द मिसाइल्स. इतने तरीके के मिसाइल्स हैं और मैंने मोटे मोटे तौर पर बताया है इतने तरीके के मिसाइल्स हैं. बट इफ यू लुक एट ईच मिसाइल सिस्टम, देयर आर न्यू वेरिएंट्स. फ्रॉम वन वेरिएंट टू द अदर, देयर आर डिफरेंट varieties, the latest varieties. Some has a new precision guided system, some has a new propellant system, किसी का रेंज ज्यादा है, वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. I'm not, उसमें हम पढ़ेंगे नहीं, क्योंकि अगर उसमें घुस गए तो वापस नहीं आएंगे. Now, in all this, the PLA places tremendous importance on precision guidance. That's important. Long range precision guidance is a very important part of PLA operations. Right? So they feel they can take out any object or any target well in enemy depth, wherever the depth is, whoever the enemy is. Of course, we know that their main enemies today are USA and India. Subset of USA is Taiwan. और उसके बाद उनके इर्द गिर्द ये फर्स्ट लाइन और फर्स्ट चेन ऑफ आइलैंड्स, जैसे साउथ कोरिया हुआ, जापान हुआ, फिलीपींस हुआ, वियतनाम. दीज आर ऑल इन द फर्स्ट चेन ऑफ आइलैंड्स. दे आर ऑल देयर टारगेट्स. एंड इधर इट्स ऑल इंडिया. बट देन देयर आर डिफरेंट इश्यूज व्हिच आई विल टच अपॉन. इट्स नॉट सो इजी कि ये जहां जाके टोक सकते हैं. एक और चीज मैं बताना चाहता हूं. इनका जो कन्वेंशनल मिसाइल्स हैं, दे आई थिंक हैव सम डिग्री ऑफ flexibility to be used at the lower levels. But as far as the strategic systems and nuclear systems are concerned, it needs the highest clearance. But anyway, it's all the PLA rocket force which operates them. So let's get into the numbers. कितने क्या हैं? So this is it. China's rocket force, without getting into किस टाइप के रॉकेट हैं, मोटे मोटे तौर पर ये इस प्रकार है. ओके, एक या इस प्रकार है. इंटर कॉन्टिनेंटल बैलिस्टिक मिसाइल्स जो हैं, उनके पास तकरीबन 500 लॉन्चर हैं. मिसाइल्स तकरीबन 350. जहां तक IRBM जो है, वो है 250 लॉन्चर्स एंड 500 मिसाइल्स. और उसका रेंजेस भी दिया हुआ है. मीडियम रेंज बैलिस्टिक मिसाइल्स 300 लॉन्चर, अबाउट 1000 missiles. SRBM short range, they have about 1000 missiles. And ground launch cruise missiles, they have about 300, but I think they should have more than 300. Okay, so if you look at this figure, this is a figure about 3,000 rockets and missiles, plus a whole lot of tactical rocket systems, unguided, like A100. That would be another 2 to 3,000. So you're looking at this force, which is about 6,000 strong. But my own guess is it might be more, especially जो short range missile systems, right? जो छोटे मोटे हैं वो ज्यादा होगा. I'm sure they have more cruise missiles than what is given in this table. क्योंकि why I'm saying this, मैं इसीलिए बता रहा हूँ क्योंकि इसका जो डेफिनेटिव आंसर कहीं नहीं मिलेगा आपको. यहाँ मैं भी नहीं दूंगा आपको, हालांकि मेरे को तकरीबन पता है कितना हमारे पास है, पर मैं दूंगा नहीं आपको. उसी तरीके से कोई ओपन इसमें कोई बताएगा नहीं. ओके, सो यू कुड एक्सपेक्ट अ लिटिल मोर. दूसरी बात, जहां तक इनका न्यूक्लियर वॉर हेड है, कुछ दिन पहले, say till about 2020, it was estimated that they had about 350 nuclear warheads. That was when, Xi Jinping said, I must expand my nuclear force. Now, when he expanded his nuclear force, he wants to have 1,500 nuclear warheads, 1,000 to 1,500 nuclear warheads by 2035. And as per estimates, they already have about 500 nuclear warheads. Okay. So that is also going on. Another thing about this PLA rocket force is this does not include the missiles which PLA Air Force has and PLA Navy has as part of their submarine fleet or their bomber fleet. So that is a little more. So that's why I said so there will be more. इसका exact तादाद हमें we'll never come to know. So we have to do a lot of guesswork. You have to do a lot of analysis based on what you know and come to a reasonable figure, adding all the things which are hidden from you. And how do you get to know what is hidden from you? You know what you're hiding from the opponent. And what is known in the public and what is hidden, we know. You put the same factor there and you'll get to know what he has. I mean, these are all rough figures. It could be up and down a bit. Okay. Now, how are these organized? That's important. How is the PLA missile force organized? Let's see this. See, of course, at the top in the black is the headquarter and the staff and equipment department and all that, but that's not very important. They have 6 bases. Base 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66. These bases, 61 to 66, these are the bases, missile bases, which have their rockets and missiles. 67 is a nuclear stockpile missile. That is, it holds all the nuclear warheads in base 67. Now, interesting thing which I read somewhere is that the nuclear base 67, which holds the nuclear, warheads, has not expanded in the recent past. If you're not expanded in the recent past, that means your storage capacity is the same because these are all open to, the satellite. So if you're not expanded that, and that means your nuclear capability has not expanded. But it is possible they have expanded through air-to-air missiles, air-launched nuclear, air-delivered nuclear warheads, and submarine warheads. Also, they could have expanded into their silos. इसके बारे में बाद में बात करें. Okay, so this is the First thing. But you have to know that they're not gone in for expansion of their basic missile base, where they have had their nuclear warheads. Okay. Then they have another base 68, where basically it's a maintenance and engineering one. And base 69 is for testing and training. So they must be having their own training system where they train the entire lot of people who are, going into the missile force, the training facility, get to normal life. So this is the larger picture of the PLA rocket force. Okay. Now let's look at the base headquarters and the base. What does a base look like? This is where things get a little interesting. Now each base would have 6 to 7 missile brigades. Okay. Could have training regiment, communications regiment, operation support regiment, some comprehensive support regiment, equipment inspection, and base hospital. Yeah, normal. Interesting thing, it has 6 to 7 missile brigades. Now, what does a missile brigade have? That's the next part of the question. Now, if you look at a missile brigade, any missile brigade, they have about, in this, they have about, let me go back. 6 to 7 missile brigades. Totally about, they have about 40 units, missile units. Right? Right. Okay. Now, if you look at it, each missile brigade has about 6 battalions. And each battalion could have 2 launching companies. Okay. Now, this is generic, mota mota, but this is not the actual, configuration. So the actual configuration varies as I've written. Each of these missile units would either be conventionally armed or nuclear tipped. Now, the conventional missile brigades, they have generally 36 launchers with 6 missiles each. It's almost standard. Now, the mobile missile brigades, they have 6 to 12 launchers per, uh, battalion, or rather for in the entire brigade. Now, deployment in silo-based nuclear missile brigades vary. That is not part of this. Normally, smaller missile means there'll be more launchers in a brigade. Okay. Now, missile brigades equipped with SRBMs could have up to 36 launchers per brigade. Abhi dekhiye, 36 launchers per brigade in a missile brigade, 6 battalions. So each battalion will have 6 launchers, and each company will have 3 launchers. Okay. But when it comes to those which are heavier variety, 6 to 12, it could be only 1 or 2. Okay. Right. Medium and IRBM may have 24 to 36. If it is 24, each battalion will have 4 missiles, each company will have 2. So it depends on, the kind of missile they are holding. Us tarike se, you'll have that number of missiles or launchers. It's not missiles, it's the launchers for that particular unit. Okay. Now, additionally, what is important is the PLRF has 6 SRBM brigades, 6, with DF11, DF15, and DS16 systems. These are the short range systems. Just to give you an idea, I'll take you back. ये देखिए, DF11, DF15, DS16. Those are to about 1,000 kilometers of range. They have 6 brigades. Now, these are the ones which they employ in any conventional operation. They could also have nuclear warheads. I'm not saying no, but generally these are conventionally to be utilized. Okay? Because China is smart. They will not utilize nuclear weapons in a hurry. Okay. Where are these missile brigades deployed? They're deployed like this. I will not go into details. There are full details. Okay. I have no problem in saying 61 brigade, base ka kahan hai, base 2, base 3. It's all there. But एक चीज देखिए, जितना इनका डिप्लॉयमेंट है, because these are all permanent locations, and these missiles don't go very far away from the permanent locations to deploy. All this deployment mostly is in the coast. It is in the Han heartland. They are protecting the Han heartland, where the threat is most. Where is the threat? In South China Sea. So they are against that. They don't feel such a great threat against India. That is why you don't see permanent deployment. So in case of a war against India, they'll have to deploy. They have to bring in some of these systems and deploy them. खास करके the short range variety, DF11, DF15, DF16, जो मैंने बताया. Long range missiles can fire at India from there itself. There's no problem. Right? So all this is there. You have to understand this. They pose a conventional, rather, they pose a nuclear threat to you today. They don't pose a conventional threat with their rockets. There are issues in this. And there are no reports of these conventional long range vectors coming into Tibet. So that is also there. Right? Okay. Now let's see the range coverage. This range coverage is of their missiles, conventional missiles, fielded conventional strike forces. If you see, with their conventional missiles, they can cover India. There's no problem. Completely. Okay? Right. And with their nuclear missiles also, they can cover India. So अगर आप देखेंगे तो चाहे वो कन्वेंशनल मिसाइल हो या nuclear missile ho, they can cover India. But can they use it? Remember, this is where the fun starts. Thinking. You can't use rockets just like that, because the moment you use rockets, it means escalation of battle. Be prepared for escalation and retaliation. एक बार ये शुरू हो गया, इसका अंत न्यूक्लियर तक जा सकता है. एक बार न्यूक्लियर शुरू हो गया तो ये नहीं फर्क पड़ता उसके पास 100 वॉरहेड है, मेरे पास 20 है. उसको भी नुकसान होगा, हमें भी नुकसान होगा. So this is something one has to understand, and you have to understand it very carefully. ईस्टर्न लद्दाख जब हुआ था 2 साल पहले, 3 साल पहले अभी, तो they never spoke of this deployment. They would have readjusted. So would we have. They would have tracked us. So would we have. But they never spoke of this. They were very careful, not even to open up with small arms. Yaad rakhiye. Because they were not confident of controlling the battle. So when people say, oh, will China attack us? My left foot, they will not attack you. They didn't attack you then, how can they attack you now? They have to understand the cost of an attack. I'll explain this a little further down the line. Escalation matrix in this is very difficult in Himalayas. Because you're facing if you go in for a war, you're creating a live border of 3,000 kilometers. I don't think defensively, I think offensively. So if I start If he does something, I will do something. Like we did गलवान में जो भी हमने किया किया और उसके बाद कैलाश रेंज में भी जो हमने किया किया. So we have the capability to do it. Yeah, if you have the capability to do it in that area, you can do it in Arunachal also, or you can do it in Sikkim also. You can do it in central sector also. He will also do it. We will also do. ये चलता रहेगा. Then, if that happens, you will have a threshold where you will start opening up with artillery. If that artillery threshold is breached, then you are into missiles and rockets and all that. So this is a game of chicken. It's not easy to let go of all these rocket forces in a hurry. Okay, right. Now let me talk about silos. Understanding this silo deployment is easy. This is one of the silos which has been photographed. ये आप गूगल में जाके क्या सर्च करो तो आपको साइलो लगा के मिसाइल साइलो चाइना मिसाइल साइलो एक आध ये निकल आएगा. This is how it looks. See the number of silos they have put. But will all silos have missiles? Not necessary. Will all silos have conventional warheads? Not necessary. It could be a mix of conventional and nuclear. Will all silos have all types of missiles? Possible. At least the long range varieties. Silos are for long range variety. So you have to understand why China is making silos. And they're making a lot of silos. They're making a lot of silos and they're also increasing the number of launchers. Both. And they're also increasing the number of warheads. And they're also upgrading the rolled missiles. So they're putting a lot of emphasis on this force. But why? We will talk later. First, get the facts right. What is a silo? This is a typical silo where you'll have the missile in the in this canister, which is underground, and then you have control systems and places to go up and down and all that on the right side. So even the people who are controlling it are underneath, who are maintaining it are underneath. Everyone is underneath, and this way they have about 100 odds. In one field, silo field, they could have 50, 60, 100 silos, which means gives an indication that they have at least 100 missiles there. But the actual fact is they don't have. Tomorrow they might have, but today they don't have. But they're constructing silos. तैयार कर लो, उसमें रखा या ना रखा हमें क्या पता है. तो उसमें क्या सरप्राइज और डिसेप्शन भी आ जाता है. देखिए जो भी चाइना वाला करेगा ना वो थोड़ा दिमाग लगा के करेगा. तो हमें भी उसी तरीके से सोच विचार करने की जरूरत है कि करना क्या है उसके साथ. एंड साइलो का फायदा क्या है? इट कैन टेक अ न्यूक्लियर हिट एंड स्टिल फंक्शन. Okay, so we'll talk of silos. Why are they having silos? They feel there is a thing that their mobile forces might not survive the first strike. You have to understand this well. Why? In the case of mobile forces, the mobile forces are somewhere, the warheads are somewhere. मैंने बोला ना base 67, and this is basically for their nuclear missiles. That's kept separate. The launchers are kept separately. So China feels by the time they take this launcher, go fit in the nuclear warhead, and then go wherever they have to deploy and be ready, they might get hit in the first strike. Okay. The second thing, the large number of silos. How many silos will come to it? They create a missile sponge. That means they can absorb the first strike and still have the capability to retaliate. Okay. Then I said deception. Deception to hoga hi hoga. Okay. Silos which are being constructed are of two varieties. Some have solid propellant and some have liquid propellant. ये भी है. Now, what is the purpose of the solid propellant? Solid propellant rockets or missiles are ready to fire. Liquid propellant are not ready to fire. They have to be prepared to fire. So, having solid propellants in silos and in mobile launchers gives them a launch on warning capability. इसका launch on warning का मतलब क्या है? You have your antenna out, you have your satellites out, you have your early warning out. If your enemy launches a missile against you, before that missile can come and hit you, you can launch. It's not second strike capability, it is launch on warning. Second strike is he launches, he hits you, then you strike back. So इससे पहले कि वो his missiles land, you launch. Now the moment you do have that launch on warning capability, you have gone between first strike and second strike capability. In any case, if you have a launch on warning capability, you have first strike capability also. तो ये भी आप बोल रहे हो कि भाई मेरे पास नो फर्स्ट यूज है, माय डॉक्ट्रिन इज नो फर्स्ट यूज, बट कैपेबिलिटी आपका फर्स्ट स्ट्राइक का। जो आप बात नहीं करोगे, हस्ताक्षर करके एक डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं निकालोगे, आप एक्चुअल करके दिखा रहे हो कि मेरे पास फर्स्ट स्ट्राइक कैपेबिलिटी। ओके, राइट। नाउ व्हाट अबाउट liquid propellants, liquid missiles, right? Okay, एक minute. Right. Okay, we'll come to liquid missiles, liquid propellant missiles. Now, these are the silo deployment areas. If you notice, there are silos in the south and there are silos in the north along the Xinjiang Russia border. ये जो ऊपर जो 4 बेस बना रहे हैं मिसाइल साइलो फील्ड्स, ये नए हैं। नीचे वाले 3 पुराने हैं, एक आध और हो सकता है कहीं, ये नहीं। तो इसके साथ क्या है जो ऊपर है, एक्चुअली अगर आप देखेंगे ये जो चाइना के ऊपर हैं मिसाइल साइलोस, नॉर्थ, they give extra range into USA. That's the basic thing. Okay, so you get that additional range by going into depth, and by going into depth, enemy short range missile systems, whether they are fired from sea or land, will not be able to reach you. Okay, so that is why they have gone in for, and one of the bases, जो missile fields which are silos that I showed you, is one of these bases, and they want to increase it. This they want to increase by about in the next few years. These 4 bases or the missile silo bases will be ready. Okay. Now the PLRF will come to liquid propellant missiles. PLRF is expanding its liquid fueled silos from where it can fire DF-5 missiles. What are those DF-5 missiles? Okay, the liquid fueled missiles can carry a larger warhead, heavier payloads than the solid fueled missiles, because they have more power to go. इससे ज़्यादा मैं बताऊंगा नहीं. I'll not go into the science of it, but take it from me. From a DF-5, you can launch MIRVs. What is MIRV? Multiple Independent Targetable Re-entry Vehicle. यानी कि एक मिसाइल जाएगा अंतरिक्ष में, it will go into 3 or 4 pieces, and each of them will do independent re-entry into the atmosphere and go to independent targets. That means each missile might have 3 to 4 warheads. So your capability, you might say, मेरे पास 500 warheads हैं, but actually, if you have out of those 500, say 50 are MIRVs, you effectively have another 200 warheads. So it might not be 500, it could be 650 to 750 to 800, depending on how many MIRVs you have. Okay. Okay. And they have plans to increase their silos to 48. And some of these silos, like I said, could have mixed ICBMs. And it is also expanding mobile launches. Okay? Right. Before I get to the analysis, I'll talk of the hypersonic glide uh, capability. Now, what is hypersonic glide capability? Which I explained. एक बार propulsion के बारे में मैंने बात किया था, उस वीडियो में मैंने पूरा बताया. उसमें क्या है? You launch a missile into space. You take it into space and you make it go around the Earth. That's called a fractional orbit system. Okay, you make it go around the Earth. And wherever you want this missile to re-enter back into the atmosphere, you make it re-enter. Once it re-enters the atmosphere, it becomes a glide vehicle. At hypersonic velocity, it starts. Since it has come on top of the target, right, without losing anything, because what happens when you put a missile in orbit around the Earth? In space, it starts moving at the speed of an object in space, which is over 6 to 700 kilometers per hour per second. So he's already got a lot of speed. He's then at about 10 Mach, re-enters, and then the glide vehicle will glide directly onto the target at that Mach number. So what does it do? It defeats any kind of AD, air defense. The problem with the system today is it's not accurate. उतना इनके पास वो क्षमता नहीं है कि वो उसको एक्यूरेट बनाए, बिकॉज एट सच हाई स्पीड्स कंट्रोलिंग देम इज प्रॉब्लम, गाइडेंस इज अ प्रॉब्लम. अभी तक इनको ये नहीं है, बट ये क्षमता है इनके पास और किसी के पास नहीं है. नाउ दिस हाइपरसोनिक ग्लाइड व्हीकल वुड बी न्यूक्लियर हेड, वॉरहेड और कन्वेंशनल. अभी तक ये नहीं पता, बट ये बताया जा रहा है कि इसके पास कन्वेंशनल वॉरहेड. So this is what PLA rocket force is all about. Now, let me give you some analysis. मेरा सोच विचार, बाकी जो बोलेंगे वो बोलेंगे. First and foremost, see, PLA, I mean the rocket force, it offsets China's lack of overseas bases. This is something which you have to understand. How does America project its power? It projects power through a series of bases which are all around the world, through aircraft carriers, through its navy, and then its integral, launch facilities. China doesn't have that. So if China doesn't have that, what has China to do? It has no choice but to go with the rocket force, and that is what it has done. So those of you who think, oh, it's a great force, it's a great force for a particular purpose. And the purpose is power projection. It wants to offset its lack of air capability. It cannot send its aircraft to its target. So it is sending its missiles. Plus the fact that China knew this long back. And that is why they have developed their missile capability, technology. And they have come here. Right. Second, one thing which I noticed in all my study is that they have tremendous rocket force, but they don't have air defense capability. Air defense capability is not very high. They have point air defense. There's no doubt. Terminal defense hai inke paas. But to stop missiles, incoming missiles at a larger range, inke paas nahi hai. इसीलिए इन्होंने S-300 लिया रशिया से, और ये दे आर मेकिंग देयर ओन, बट इट इज नॉट एट डिप्लॉयड, इट इज नॉट एट entered into service. Okay. The next point is that, see, whether missiles, whatever you do, अगर आप देखेंगे रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर, तो in the Russia Ukraine war, Russia fired lot of missiles against Ukraine. But did it win them the war? No. Because once those missiles are fired, once past that initial phase, you have to handle the tactical level battle. Otherwise, you can't win. The notion that rockets alone will get you victory is over. In that battle, these rockets have limited role. In fact, no role. ये साबित हो गया वहां, और मेरे को डाउट ही नहीं है ये तिब्बत में और भी प्रॉब्लम होगा. ओके, there are a lot of issues in Tibet for you to go and deploy these rockets as it is. Okay, देखिए, in China, in Tibet, China's employment of rocket forces is to compensate its loss of air power capability because of altitude. They can't deploy their air. They have very limited runways. Even in the limited runways, they have very little lift-off capability, payload capability. Everything is affected in those runways. So if they don't have air capability, they have to make good with rocket capability. So they're making good their lack of capability in air through rockets. So they are not outnumbering you. You have air capability which is more versatile. Okay. Then they have to induct these systems into Tibet. And Tibet has limited ingress and egress routes. 2-3 ही रास्ते हैं, आप कहीं भी जाके लगा नहीं सकते हो. और ये मोटे मोटे हथियार हैं, ये कहीं भी you cannot take it anywhere you want and deploy it. They can be pinpointed and you can deal with them. ये नहीं कि एक दिन अचानक आ जाएगा. Naturally, they will deploy their missiles within the air bases. हैं कितने एयरबेस? 2-3 तो हैं, तो वहीं हो सकता है, और कहाँ जाएगा ये? बाहर जाएगा तो इज वल्नरेबल. बेस एयर डिफेंस के अंदर ही वो दायरे में रहेगा, तो उसको ठोक दो तो ये भी टूट जाएगा. तो it's not so easy for him to deploy all these systems, tactical systems, and get away with it. And this is what we have to understand. I'm sure the armed forces are putting their head on it. I'm just helping them with my ideas. Okay. Okay. I also said most of their bases are against, I wouldn't say against, in the east, जो हमने मैप दिखाया था. Basically in their populated areas, against Taiwan, because Taiwan is their priority. ये ड्रिल करते रहते हैं ताइवान के अगेंस्ट. They are worried about USA, so they are worried about Philippines. वहां चाहिए इनको ज्यादा. एंड अगर हम पूरा हिसाब लगाएंगे कि आफ्टर ऑल चाइना हैज, if it goes into a war and if it's a two front situation, देखिए हम बात करते थे हमारा टू फ्रंट सिचुएशन है, क्या चाइना का नहीं हो सकता टू फ्रंट सिचुएशन? अगर चाइना का टू फ्रंट सिचुएशन हो गया तो वो कितना मिसाइल आपके अगेंस्ट लेके आएगा और कितना बचाएगा अगेंस्ट यूएसए? सारा हमारे ऊपर ही टोकेगा, नहीं ना? कुछ तो वो रशिया के लिए भी रखेगा. कल के दिन ये सब देखते हुए रशिया अगर फायदा उठाना चाहता है तो कुछ वहां के लिए रखेगा, कुछ कोरिया के अगेंस्ट रखेगा, कुछ सब चीज के लिए रखेगा. वो एक दिन ऐसे तो नहीं होगा कि भाई चाइना के पास मिसाइल ही नहीं है तो बैठ जाएगा क्या? तो एक प्रोडक्शन साइकिल होता है. सो हिज एक्सपेंडिचर साइकिल आल्सो हैज टू मैच विद द प्रोडक्शन साइकिल. एंड हाउ मच कैन यू स्टॉक? And a missile under stock needs regular maintenance. It has got a shelf life. एक बार मिसाइल आपने ऑन ग्राउंड लगा दिया तो उसका शेल्फ लाइफ उल्टी गिनती शुरू हो जाती है. So these are all live problems. Okay, so it's not as if China overnight आके he'll his rocket force and start off. Yeah, he might use his rocket force, डराएगा हमें, सब कुछ होगा, बट एक्चुअल लड़ाई में उतना ही उनकी ताकत है जितना हमारा. ये मेरे ख्याल में उनका शायद कम भी हो सकता है, पर ये मेरा पहला अंदाज है. The Air Force and the Army have to sit together and figure it out. Exactly. There are methods to do it. I know how to do it, but I'm not the guy to do it. जिस दिन मेरे को करना था हमने कर लिया. Okay, like I said, the ability to deploy these heavy rocket and missile systems is limited by many factors in Tibet. We must use intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance capabilities to identify where PLRF is going to deploy. And India should not compete with China quantitatively. कभी ये मत सोचो कि भाई मेरे पास उसके पास 4 मिसाइल है तो मेरे पास भी 4 होना चाहिए, उसके पास 10 है तो मेरे पास 10 होना चाहिए. डोंट गो इनटू द नंबर्स गेम. नंबर्स गेम ना अच्छा होता है सुनने के लिए, भाई मेरे पास 30 मिसाइल है, तेरे पास 5 मिसाइल है, तो फर्क ये आता है कि भाई ये 30 मिसाइल के साथ आप कर क्या सकते हो, मैं 5 मिसाइल के साथ क्या कर सकता हूँ. वो है इम्पोर्टेंट. क्वालिटेटिव इम्पोर्टेंट इज इम्पोर्टेंट. आई मीन क्वालिटेटिव इम्पैक्ट इज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट. क्वांटिटेटिव होल्डिंग इज नॉट इम्पोर्टेंट. आपके पास कुछ भी हो सकता है. एक मोटा आदमी को गिराना आसान होता है, एक पतला आदमी को गिराना आसान नहीं होता, क्योंकि पतला मोटा आदमी को थोड़ा धक्का दो उसका सेंटर ऑफ ग्रेविटी हिल जाता है ना. ये तो वास्तविकता है. ओके, तो ये सब हमने सुन लिया रॉकेट उसके बारे में, और उसको काउंटर कैसे करना वो भी हमने सुन लिया. और ये जो मैं बोल रहा हूँ कोई नई आइंस्टीन का कहानी नहीं बोल रहा हूँ या न्यूटन का डिस्कवरी नहीं है. अगर आप ठंडे दिमाग से सोचोगे ये सब बाहर निकल आता है. ठीक. ओके, लास्ट पॉइंट, और ये इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट. हमने सुना है इनका डिफेंस मिनिस्टर को आउट कर दिया, वो पता नहीं कहाँ किस जेल में सड़ रहा है. उसके साथ साथ पीएलए के टॉप जनरल्स 2-3 को हटा दिया, बीच में भी बहुत हटा दिया. एक नेवी वाले को इसके ऊपर लगाया. इसका लीडरशिप गोलमटोल. आप सोचो, आपके घर के अंदर आपका हेड ऑफ द फैमिली और उसके जो नीचे हैं वो सब हटा दिए गए, तो आपका लीडरशिप क्या होगा. और ये आया क्यों, ये इंपॉर्टेंट है. ये आया इसलिए क्योंकि ये पीएलआरएफ के लिए बेशुमार पैसा दिया गया था. चाइना हैज स्प्लर्ज्ड ऑन द पीएलआरएफ. रॉकेट फोर्स खड़ा करो, ये करो, वो करो, पर करप्शन भी है इसमें. बहुत करप्शन है. और ये करप्शन की वजह से इनके डिफेंस मिनिस्टर को सैक कर दिया और 2 पीएलए जनरल को सैक कर दिया. क्यों इनका प्रॉब्लम है? क्योंकि इसके 10-15 दिन बाद, इनका सैकिंग सूकिंग के बाद, इनका जो नंबर 2 है सेंट्रल मिलिट्री कमीशन का, उसने एक भाषण दिया कि भाई जो भी हम तैयार कर रहे हैं सही होना चाहिए, क्वालिटी ठीक होना चाहिए, वगैरह वगैरह वगैरह. इसके बारे में मैंने आपको एक वीडियो में जब इनका मिलिट्री के बारे में बात किया था ये पूरा बताया आपको. ये तुरंत ये जो रॉकेट फोर्स का जो कांड हुआ था उसके बाद उसने बात किया. उससे जाहिर होता है कि they have problems of quality. If they have problems of quality, then you can imagine the quality of their missiles. वही बात है, चाइना का माल चले तो चांद तक, नहीं तो शाम तक. ओके, यहाँ पर मेरा जो भी बोलना है वो खत्म होता है. I will now take on questions. Okay. How long will it take for India to build out its missile force with structure and lethality we need? And currently, where are we with the same? Okay, Karthik, first and foremost, what I want to tell you is we already have a strategic force command. We have everything. Or we don't have this philosophy of mixing our conventional with non-conventional. Don't have. Plus, we don't have the requirements of what PLA has. What China has, because they don't have an air force intrinsically. I told you, for their power projection, they need this. So the PLARF is more of a power projection system. Either we are we are conventional stroke nuclear deterrence. We have, and we have a stated second use for strike capability. No first use, second strike capability. We have all our rockets and missiles. Otherwise, are tactical and operational systems. And we are not using them the way PLARF is using them. If you have to use them in that manner, then you need a rocket force. Otherwise, you don't need a rocket missile force. Otherwise, you're better off giving these items to the theater command and tell the theater commander to use it. And you need the numbers, which you don't have. We don't need. Like I told you, we don't need. Do we have enough numbers to handle China? I'm sure by now we have. Because how we handle China and his whole story is different from what he wants to do with us. I told you Tibet has funny terrain. Our side, the slopes are steep. When the slopes are steep, on his side, it's all flat. When it's flat terrain, missiles behave better. When it is steep terrain, missiles don't behave well. Why? Because if it misses by even 50 meters, the target, it will go down by 2000 feet, 2000, 3000 meters into the khud. After that, it has got no value. So he might have 300 missiles against your 100. But will those 300 be effective? Not necessary. Will they be effective against your Air Force? Will your Air Force make it those difference? Yes, they will. So if you have lesser number, why do you want to have a missile force and waste time with it? That is why my view is we don't need a missile force. We will need a missile force if your thought process changes. I don't see that happening. Okay.